feel free to come up, fill in the seats up front here. Got plenty of room, big crowd, but plenty of room. Still some room up front, please. I think Darrell would refer to this as herding chickens. Please be seated. Good afternoon. My name is Ron Turner, and on behalf of Marilyn, Carrie, Jack, the entire Barton family, I want to welcome you to this remembrance of Darrell. Thanks so much for coming. Some of you from long distances, I'm sure, which in and of itself says a lot about Darrell. I want to remind you, if you haven't already, there are pages of memory books in this direction in the lobby out here, and if you haven't already signed one or more of those, please do so. I think these will probably be valued keepsakes for the Barton family, and it would be wonderful if you could participate in that with them. I first met Darrell in 1970, started working with him the next year here at Channel 4, then WKY. So I knew Darrell. We were colleagues and friends for a very long time. So I knew him well, and he taught me a lot of things. And one of the first things he taught me, very vividly, and it sticks with me to this very day, is don't speak for Darrell. I've kind of been asked to. I learned that the hard way. But if I were to make an educated guess based on knowing him for as long as I have, I think it's safe to say he would be very honored that so many of you came today to remember him, honor him. It would be very meaningful to him, I know. So there were many facets to Darrell's life, and most of those will be represented here today. And I think the great thing about this is that even for many of us who knew Darrell for a long, long time, we'll have a chance today to learn new things about him that we didn't know. So Marilyn has made it clear that she wants this to be a celebration, a chance to share stories and smile, a chance to reflect upon good times, a chance to remember an incredible and colorful life. So that's what we're going to do. Now, because Darrell had such a storied photography and journalism career, there might be an expectation that this will be the kind of the best of Darrell Barton Film Festival. And while that would be a great show, believe me, time just doesn't allow it. That's more of like a Woodstock length thing to do all that. And I wouldn't want to be the editor in charge of boiling all that down to a few minutes. So there will be a lot of pictures, obviously, but the good thing about our wired world of today is that we can kind of produce our own best of Darrell documentary going to YouTube and other sites like that. And I encourage you to do it because I think that's another good way to reflect on Darrell's amazing life. One more word before we get started here. The chair over here, that rocking chair comes straight off the porch at Dead Coyote Hill, where Darrell often sat, rocked, pondered, and I'm sure came up with solutions to all the world's ills. If that chair could only talk. But in a way, today, it will, because each of the speakers will place on the chair or near the chair an item that links them to Darrell or reminds them of him. And so at the end of this, it will have a story of sorts. And my first contribution to that You have to be at least 55 probably to know what this is. This Bell & Howell 70DR camera back in the day, and that was back there. This was the go-to camera for recording news events. And Darrell had one in his hands the first time I met him at a fire in southern Oklahoma. And nobody could make one of these things sing like Darrell. So with that, let's let the memories begin and celebrate Barton. Thanks again for coming.
Good afternoon. I'd like to start with a blessing, an opening blessing. Father, we thank you so much for the life of Darrell Barton. Today we celebrate all that he has given to us and the legacy of his life on earth. Thank you for what a good friend he has been to all of us. Thank you for the many ways in which he has given to our society. We think about what a kind, good neighbor he has been and his love for community. May his acts of service be a lasting light to all of us. We praise you, Lord, for the working life of Darrell. We bring to mind some of his many achievements and thank you for the countless blessings that they leave behind for us today. Finally, we are so grateful for Darrell. We will always deeply treasure him in our hearts and give thanks for everything he has given to us. To quote Albert Pike, "What we have done for ourselves alone dies with us. What we have done for others and the world remains with us and is immortal." My name is Sister Barbara Joseph, and I am one of Darrell's friends, and I met Darrell in 2010. And I received a phone call from this man who said, "Hi, I'm Darrell Barton, and I'm interested in doing some photos of homeless people." And I said, "Okay, well, that's good." You know, I really didn't know him. And he said, "I'd like to, I understand you have a pantry downtown in Oklahoma City, and I'd like to come down and shoot some pictures." So I said, "Okay, well, why don't you meet me on this Friday when we're open, and we'll talk a little bit." So I really never gave it too much thought, and then I was in the building next door, and we were giving out clothing that day, and all of a sudden, one of my volunteers said, "Sir, you have to get at the end of the line." And I looked, and I saw this man, and I said, "Well, he looks kind of maybe somebody from the 60s. But then I looked, and he had a camera tucked under his vest. And I said, "I wonder if that's him." And so he said, "Well, wait a minute, sister." And so he goes, "I'm Darrell Barton." And I said, "Oh, okay, you know, that's fine." So we started talking a little bit, and he kind of explained what he wanted to do at the pantry, that he didn't want to really invade their privacy, but he really wanted to be able to capture some photos. And so I said, "Okay, well, that'll be fine, but you know, I'm kind of busy right now, so I'm going to go. If you could go next door, I'll catch up with you." So he goes next door, and apparently he walked in the door, and they told him, "I'm sorry, but you have to go around the corner to the picnic tables, and that's where you get your coffee." So he had, I guess, you know, for him, he probably loved every minute of that. And so that's kind of how our relationship began. And we sat down and started talking, and he just told me he wanted to do some photos. But then he asked me if I would be interested in a book of the pantry. And so I thought about it, and I said, gosh, that would be great, And so our relationship began, and like 800 or 900 photos later, Darrell put together a beautiful book dedicated to the people, our friends downtown, and for the Pantry. And it was a real blessing getting to know him as a person. He was, we had so much fun. We actually had a lot in common, too. And we had a lot not in common as well. But, but it really didn't stop us, One of the things when it came time to really put the book together, you have to realize I run a pantry, and I run a pretty tight ship, and I'm very opinionated. Well, Darrell's very opinionated, as you all probably know. And we would have these little conversations back and forth about, well, I don't know if I want this one in there. I don't know if I want this in the book. And he'd say, well, maybe you should, really consider having that. And we would just go back and forth and back and forth. And I guess it took, Marilyn, would you say about a year and a half before? It was close to almost 2 years before we got the book finally put together. But those 2 years were a blessing for me, because I got to know a great man. And we really, really enjoyed each other. And I'd sit over at the house sometimes, a couple times when I was over there, and I loved it out there. That was really beautiful, being out at your property there. That was really peaceful. But if you get the opportunity to look at the book, I believe I brought another book Darrell made for himself of a few different photos in that book. But the book it's magnificent. It really is. We both, after looking at the pictures, decided that no words hardly needed to be put into this book, because the pictures themselves tell the story of each person on each page. It's a beautiful book, and it's a wonderful gift, and I'm very honored to be here, and I feel like those memories, they'll never go away, and I'm blessed to have them. So thank you.